Welcome to this candidates and agents briefing for our local government and parish council elections for May 2025. Just want to move on to the next slide, Paul. I'll introduce a number of topics. We're just going to run through some information. These are the topics we're going to go through, the kind of who's who, some key dates on the timetable, agents, voter ID, postal ID, polling stations, as it says, the candidate spending integrity issues, and the key contacts that you might want to follow up on if you've got any questions that you want to ask the team. So those are the topics we're going to cover. If we'll just go on to the next slide. Just to introduce myself, so I am Anna Earnshaw. I am the returning officer and responsible for running the elections and also what's called the electoral registration officer. So I'm the person who is responsible for making sure that we maintain the register of electors and absent voter lists too. Our elections manager is Louise Aston, and in shortly I'm just going to hand over to Louise to take you through some of the key facts and stats. I would just say to you, really important, so we will be recording this anyway. Some of you have stood before and you may have had some information obviously before from previous elections, but please remember since 2021 when we formed as a council, there has been changes in legislation in terms of the rules that guide us, the new code of conduct and things like that. So I would ask you to not rely on old information and make sure that you rely on the very latest information that we'll publish and share with you, and don't assume that previous things stood as you previously knew. It's probably beneficial just to assume that you need to start again. Right, so just go a couple of housekeeping rules, just to kind of make clear. As I said, we'll make sure, we think we're going to cover all the things that we think you need to know. We will make sure people's microphones are muted. Oh, there you go, I've got kicked back as somebody hasn't. We'll mute, hang on, I'll mute everybody. Thank you. Right, we will do a Q&A at the end, so I would ask you not to interrupt and ask questions as you go. We will make sure we cover them all at the end, and as I said, we will record the session so that anybody who's not here can see it and it can be passed on. And as I said, we will also share contact details at the end of who to contact should you have any questions. So I'm going to start to hand over to the team now on the technical details and the timetable, and I think, are we with you first, Paul, or Louise? You'll have to unmute.
You're with me.
You're with Louise, I thought it was, yeah. Right, over to you, Louise, thank you.
Hi. So to start off with, we're looking at the election timetable. As some of you know, we're already a good way into it. So we've had our deadline to register to vote, which was on the 11th of April. We've had our deadline for postal votes, which was Monday this week. So we're now heading towards the notice of poll, which is where we list all the polling stations within the ward or the parish, and also the electorate that can vote at those stations. And then we roll on to the deadline for brand new proxies. So that's people who don't currently have a proxy but want to have a proxy because they can't make it to the station, or don't think that they might be able to make it, where somebody will go along and vote on their behalf for them. We've also got the deadline coming up for voter authority certificates. So they're people who don't have necessarily a form of photographic ID. Some of the older people we have don't always have a photo driving license. You know, they may still have a paper copy, and that's not acceptable. So they can apply for a new voter ID, which we will issue, but the deadline for that is 5 p.m. on the 23rd. Rolling on further in the timetable, important one for most of you is the deadline to apply for counting and polling agents. That is the 24th of April. It's not time specific, but we would say by the end of the working day, so 5 p.m. around about, to get your appointments into us. We'll happily receive them via email with the forms attached if you've got the forms. They were all in your packs that came out to you. And then polling day, Thursday the 1st of May, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is when the polls are open. We'll be in the office either side of those times, and available on the phones to take queries from electors if they've got any. And our contact details will come up further on in this presentation. The deadline to apply for an emergency proxy, that's where you've been taken ill, or you've just been notified that you've got to go away for work, or you've got an operation that's just occurred, appointment that's occurred, sorry. That has to take effect. So you have to have only known about it after the deadline for proxy votes. If you knew about it in advance of that, there is nothing we can do. An emergency proxy does not apply in those circumstances. We've then got the replacement for lost and spoilt postals. That is where somebody may have ripped up their ballot paper thinking they didn't want it and then changed their mind. Or they've lost it and can't find it, or it was never delivered to them and they are down as having a postal vote. So that's the deadline for that. Alterations to the register is where we have done something physically wrong in the register, where we may not have added somebody on at the right property, or they're clearly on a form that's come back and we haven't added them. It's very rare that those come up, but that is in there in legislation to allow us to make those changes. And then another important one for you all is a return of election expenses. That is mandatory. Whether you have spent something or you haven't spent something, you do have to fill in a declaration and send them back to us. The dates are different, as you can see on the slide, as to whether you're standing as a parish, which includes Northampton Town, Brackley Town, Toaster Town, or whether you're standing as one of the WNC wards. The dates are very different, so just be aware of that. Thank you. Agents, touched on that a little bit already. As it says, you must give us notice in writing. We include email as writing. So, you can send us an email to the returning officer mailbox, which I think you all know what that one is. Again, I think is included at the end of the slide. You can tell us a big long list of those people who are going to be polling agents. But what we do ask is, if you are having polling agents, make sure you actually specify which polling stations they're going to be agents at. If it is the whole of the ward, put the whole of the ward. That's absolutely fine. We just need to know, because we have a duty to notify the presiding officer who's in that polling station who might be coming to that station. Your counting agent forms have all been included in your packs. You may have got that either via email or via post. If you haven't had the forms yet, or you can't find them in your pack, just drop us an email to the returning officer box, and we can either supply them again to you, or you can let us know on email around those appointments. But as I say, the deadline is the 24th of April. Thank you. Absent voting applications, we've passed most of the deadlines now in terms of this. So as I said earlier, the only one that's left really is the proxy vote, which is 5 o'clock. That's a hard deadline, and we can't deviate from that 5 p.m. cutoff. So what we would say is that proxies can be applied for online now. So an elector can do it all via the .gov website. That is the quickest and easiest way to do it, because it takes about 5 minutes at most. But they do need to know what their national insurance number is and date of birth. You'd be surprised the amount of people that don't know what their date of birth is or tell us it incorrectly, and then we have to reject their application. So they can do it that way. There's still the manual forms if they want to have the manual forms, which are also available on the .gov website. They can download that and scan that to us, or email it to us if that's the way they wish to do it. But that deadline, as I say, is a fixed in stone one. Oh, it's me still as well. Sorry, you'll get bored of my voice. Campaigners, you cannot handle postal votes unless they are a close relative. A close relative is defined by the Electoral Commission as a spouse or civil partner, a parent, grandparent, sibling, child or grandchild. They're very specific on that remit. It also says that you can handle postal votes if it is in conjunction with your job, which is, a post person. that's really the only restrictions that are in there in respect to campaigners handling postal votes. There are limits on how many you can hand in. As it says there, there's 5 plus their own for each poll. So some areas have got 2 polls going on, a parish and an award. So it would be 5 plus 1 for each of those. They're new rules that came in, and we didn't have those in 21. So that's a change for some of you. A campaigner at the election is anybody who is listed as carrying out activities designed to promote an outcome at the election. So whether you are posting a Facebook post or displaying a poster outside your house, that would, in terms of this, it would declare you as a campaigner. So it's quite sort of encompassing when you're talking about campaigning. That's it. It's Mark now.
Okay, it's Mark.
Sorry, I was just trying to find the mute button. So for the last few elections, we've had to have voter ID in present. It has to be one of the prescribed forms of photographic ID, which I have to provide at the polling station. And we will accept old copies of out-of-date photographic IDs. So even if it's expired, we will still accept it, as long as the photograph is still a good likeness of the person. And people who are acting as proxy on behalf of another person will also have to bring in voter ID. If they lose the voter ID just before the election as well, there is an option to have an emergency proxy, or it gets destroyed. They can apply for an emergency proxy. In terms of campaigning, you have to make sure that you do put imprints on all campaign material, and that includes websites, any social media posts that you have, just making sure that you do have those imprints there. Please make sure you do comply with planning rules, so make sure that any advertising is not on sort of public property, public lands. So just make sure you're applying for all the planning regulations. Make sure that outdoor posters are removed 2 weeks after the election. Don't produce any material that looks like a poll card or sort of any election type stationery that comes from WNC. Do not pay people to display your adverts unless they display adverts as part of their normal business. And do not handle any postal vote documentations you are not entitled to. And also, you shouldn't affix materials to highways, lampposts, and the cost of removal may be charged back to the parties. Campaigners are an essential element of a healthy democracy, but their activities should not bring into question the integrity of the election process. So make sure that any application forms conform with the requirement of electoral law. So at the moment, if you do provide any proxy applications, they should have a date of birth, national insurance number, the reason for the proxy. If you are going to be using your own forms, it's worth just checking the Electoral Commission template forms before you design your own, and make sure that the ERO addresses are added onto the return of any paper forms, and make sure that if you do collect proxy vote application forms, that you make sure that they're provided to us within 2 working days. Do not encourage postal ballot packs to be redirected, and don't encourage electors to appoint a campaigner as a proxy, because there are new rules on proxies, which I have included in the chat links. And then voter authority certificates, you should not handle those certificates at any point, and you should encourage if electors can't, the post doesn't get to them, they can be sent to the ERO and they can collect them from the council offices. Next slide, please. In terms of postal votes, never touch an elector's postal vote ballots. Don't observe them completing their postal vote ballots, and never handle or take any completed ballot papers other than that of your family members. Campaigning outside of polling stations, so you are allowed to put your messages to voters on polling day, including public spaces outside polling places. But just make sure that the access to polling places and payments around polling places are clear to allow voters to enter, and you're allowed tellers. The polling stations are open from 7 AM till 10 PM, and our office will be open from 6:30 AM till 10 PM for any queries relating to the administration of the elections. And our contact details will be on a later slide. For any queries relating to election finance, please refer these to the Electoral Commission, and again, those contact details will be shown later. Voters or in the polling station at or before 10 PM will be allowed to vote. They'll be issued with a queue card if there is a queue up 10 PM, and then voters in the election will need to present photographic ID at the polling stations, and voters can request to have their ID checked in private. Postal votes can be handed into the polling station within the voting area. Anyone returning the postal vote by hand must complete a postal vote return form, otherwise the postal vote will be rejected, and there'll be a sample of those forms at the polling stations. And there are the same rules at the if they drop off postal votes at the council offices as well. All of them have to complete a postal vote return form. An individual may hand in a maximum of 6 postal votes, which includes their own and 5 others per poll. If the individual is a campaigner, they may only handle their own postal vote and those that belong to close family members or people who they provide care. Polling station staff will not be able to provide advice about whether or not someone is a campaigner, but they may reject postal votes if there are reasonable cause to believe an individual is a campaigner. If the postal votes are handed in not in accordance with the rules, then they will be rejected. Postal votes for all contested areas may be returned by hand to any of our local offices in Daventry, Towcester or Northampton. Staff authorised by the returning officer may assist anyone wishing to hand in postal votes to complete the relevant form. Postal votes dropped off to reception or other council office desks or posted to the council letterboxes without completing the postal vote return form will be rejected and won't be counted. And we do contact all of the people who get their postal vote rejected because they haven't completed that relevant form.
Thank you, Mark. That's my one and only slide. So the counting of votes will take place at the Benham Sports Centre on Kings Park Road, Northampton. For those of you who attended the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner election count in May last year, we'll be using the main Benham Sports Hall rather than the tennis centre, which we used for the general election count in July. Ballot boxes will be returned and kept under guard overnight, but on the 2nd of May in the morning, we will verify the ballots. For those who haven't been to an election before, verification essentially means we open the ballot boxes and we count the number of ballots and make sure it matches the ballot paper account that's can be completed by the presiding officer from that polling station. And then we will count the wards in 2 tranches. So there are 35 wards that now make up West Northamptonshire Council. and we will count the first 18 of those according to the schedule that's in the letter you've received, and then the next 17 once those have been counted. We have had a larger number of candidates than expected, like most authorities, by some considerable distance. So in accordance with Electoral Commission guidance, we are taking steps to just manage the safe attendance of everyone in the count. And that means obviously we have to place some limits on the number of counting agents. We will have, so successful candidates obviously be invited to stay for the duration of the count. We will have screens throughout the venue with the latest news and information available on it, as well as QR codes that will take you through to our website where you can see the results come up in close to real time. Parking for the event will be at the Nationwide car park over the road. So again, if you've attended before, you'll be familiar with that. They have a very large car park, which they kindly allow us to use to facilitate our use of Benham Sports Centre. There is an on-site cafe. We just ask that food and drink generally isn't consumed in the count hall, while the count staff will be taking refreshments. That'll only be at times between counting stages when there are no ballot papers on the table. I think you've also had a link to a booklet that explains the process for the verification and count in more detail.
Right. So in terms of candidate spending, for all candidates have to provide a spending return to us at the end of the election, which outlines all the expenditure that we received. This expenditure is, in terms of our responsibility for the expenditure, we receive the expenses, but we don't do anything other than receive the expenses. So we don't monitor what people have submitted. That is the responsibility of the Electoral Commission. So as stated earlier, if you just refer any queries regarding candidate expenditure to the Commission, because they'll have a much better idea about whether or not you can spend that or not, on how to complete the forms. So the candidate expenditure is defined as certain expenses used for the purpose of the candidate's election during the regulated period, which starts from when we publish the notice of election. The responsibility of the election agent is for the candidate expenditure. The limit on expenses is £960 plus 8 pence per elector, and it is reduced for joint candidates. And we have published all of the expenditure limits on our website. We must get and receive receipts for £20 or over for WNC ward elections, and £10 for parish candidates. Receipts over £10 for parish candidates, and I will put in the link. In a second. The returns due are for the West Northamptonshire elections is 35 calendar days after the result. For the parish elections, it's 28 calendar days after the date of elections, and returns will be made public by the returning officer, and they will be available for inspection. Sample returns may be reviewed by the Electoral Commission. Failure to submit a spending return is a criminal offence enforceable by the police, and it is not something that is reimbursed. So sometimes we refer to them as candidate expenses, but we don't send you money back. So that query has come back to us in the past. And as I said before, any queries should be directed to the Electoral Commission. Okay, and the contact details for the Electoral Commission are there. That's everything in terms of our presentation, so open to questions.
Okay. Before we just open up the floor, Mark, there's just a couple of questions here. Let's just go backwards in the chat a second. A reminder, what was the date of the published notice of elections in the end? I can't remember what it was now. What was the date that we published, sorry? Paul, Mark, are you there?
It's the 14th of March, sorry.
14th of March, sorry, that's fine. A question too around just voting and at the polling stations. Are candidates allowed to stand outside and ask who people are going to vote for? I shall add the other question. Are they allowed to do that as part of their on the night campaigning or polling?
That is sort of what the tellers do. So yes, we've always had parties who stand outside and ask for election numbers. Yeah.
Okay, and this is one more that's in the chat that just to answer, are we saying that each and every pro whatever party posted on WhatsApp has to have a statement? That's a technical question.
I think the best thing to do, there's very clear guidance issued by the Electoral Commission, and our recommendation would always be to refer candidates to that guidance to read it. And obviously, if you have any questions, you can come back to us or the Commission. But the guidance is very clear in terms of what does or doesn't get caught by this requirement.
It's almost worth just being on the safe side for most of things you published online.
There was an email that went out at the beginning of the week to all candidates and agents, reminding them of imprints that needed to be put on digital campaigning posts that were being put up, because there was a lot that went up over the weekend on Facebook. So I did do a reminder out to everybody.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. There's a couple more just on the chat, and then we'll go to the hands up one, and I'll move away from it as well. Can candidates come for the whole day if they want to the count venue when we're doing the count?
So as per the letter that we've issued, we're counting in tranches, and to manage attendance, because we think it would be very well attended, we're asking candidates to attend for the tranche that they're being counted for. So if that would be at the end of the day, then that's when they would need. I think we're asking them to arrive by 3:30 for the second tranche. So do check your letter and find out when your count is due to take place.
Yeah, and it's all in the booklet, and it's obviously about us running a safe, thing on the day with a lot of people there and a lot going on. Make sure that it's all sort of run in a very transparent way. Just a couple of questions on expenses. What kind of things might count as expenses? Just give an example.
It would be things like your election leaflets that you would be posting out, and I think that's probably the main one that people would be claiming for, to be fair.
Okay, and there's just a question here: if you haven't got any expenses to submit as parish council election, and there's nothing to submit as such, do you still have to submit something, even if it's a nil return? I think really is the question.
Yes, even for uncontested parishes, you do have to submit a expending return. So yes, everyone will have to do that, and we will remind all the parish councils of that beforehand.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So should we go to some of the hands up? And I'm going to have to apologise because people's names obviously do come up sometimes in funny orders, or that you might not be the person whose camera or device you're using. So the first one has come up as Vincent C. Do you want to ask your question?
Yes, hopefully a quick one. I recall last time the count went into the evening. Is that expected again this time, or was that due to COVID restrictions?
We had fewer count staff because of the social distancing requirements in 2021. So we've got this time 18 count teams instead of 12. So we are expecting, because we're verifying in the morning and then counting in the afternoon, we are expecting to go into the early evening. I wouldn't really like to put a time on it, but I would hope we could get finished by early evening. I'll leave it at
that. For candidates who may have arrangements in the day, sorry, a follow-up question. I saw the times you would like us there.
Mm-hmm.
Are we able to come after if we have a pre arrangement that we can't?
Yes, I mean, what we've tried to do, because we want to complete the count obviously as efficiently as we can, we would say to the candidates, arrive by 3:30, which then allows us to start that tranche of counting at 3:30. If we say 4 o'clock, then we wouldn't start until 4 o'clock because candidates wouldn't be there. But obviously, because we've said by 3:30, if you're not there at 3:30, we will start counting anyway, but we won't stop you from attending if you're on the list to come into the count.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Deeks?
Hi, just a quick one on the pack that you sent through. Mentions Northants Police Security Briefing, and it gives a table underneath the paragraph that says click to register. Obviously, this is a physical document. You can't click to register and go on to the Northants Police Security Briefing. So will you be sending something out with an email with the hyperlinks in so that we can actually click on the reason
you had it in paper copies because we didn't have an email address for you. So if we didn't have an email address, we had to get that information out to you. But if you send an email to the returning officer mailbox, what we will do is I'll make sure that that's sent out to you with the links.
Super.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you. Sandy Maitland.
Hello. I've got two questions. Standing in the parish, I don't have an agent. Does that matter?
No, that doesn't matter at all.
Right. Okay. And the other thing is when it comes to the count, am I able to come on my own or can I bring anybody with me?
We are not allowing guests plus ones. So you would only be able to bring a count agent with you if you've received a letter asking you to appoint one.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, there was a couple that just appeared in the chat as well afterwards, Paul. So are expense returns required where wards are not contested? You said yes to that, didn't you? We still had to do that for the parish and town councils. Expense returns?
Yeah, I think that was Mark that answered that one.
Yeah, they have to do it for the parish.
And Councillor Matton, you've asked the question again about campaigning. I think what we're saying is tellers are absolutely allowed to be outside polling stations and ask how people intend to vote if they choose to answer that question. I thought it's a slightly different question to campaigning, but that's always been the case that the tellers can ask that question. Okay. Right, I have no other hands up and I can't see any other questions. No,
I have put the link to the sorry, I just saying I've put the link to the guidance
I was about to say
on digital imprints. So rather than attempt to answer all those questions, because it obviously might come unstuck there, I'd just recommend everyone to have a look at that guidance. It is quite clear. It does make it clear what sort of material counts as a digital imprint and what requires a digital imprint and what doesn't.
Yeah, okay. Right, so of course a flurry of questions now. So Emmy Williamson.
Hi, yeah, just following up on the tranches. So if you're right at the end of the day, are you allowed to be there all day? So for the first tranche as well as the second tranche, that's the first question.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question? I was just responding to something in the chat.
If you're in the second tranche, it says be there by, I can't remember off the 3 p.m. or
3:30, I think.
That's it. So does that mean that you're allowed to be there for the first tranche? Well, all day?
No, because of the larger number of candidates, we're obviously going to allow we give priority to the candidates whose wards are being counted at that time. So if you are a tranche 2 candidate and you arrive at say 1:30, then we would politely ask you to come back when we're ready to count your ward.
Oh, I see. Right. So is there a way to be there to support? Would I need, for instance, if I'm in tranche 2, but I want to support, but I'm the agent and want to support people in tranche 1?
If you're an agent, you can attend both tranches.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll have a note, because obviously a lot of candidates are also agents for other candidates, in which case we will have that noted on the guest list.
Oh, I see. That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Which also answers the question in the chat, can agents be there through the day?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
that, yes,
So so I think that's the same thing as you said, Paula. They're there for a number of candidates. May well be the
Yeah.
case that you could. I mean, the key for us is managing that many people in the room with everything going on. But I'm sure that that makes sense now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So who've we got next? Emmy Williamson. That's who I asked, isn't it? So Barry Mahoney, please.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, good. I've got the electoral expenses form come through in an Excel spreadsheet. I'm assuming that the return of it is returned back to the electoral services at West Northants, which was the originator. And there's a question on that spreadsheet which says date you became a candidate. Is that to the 2nd of April, or is it the earlier date at which the validity of nomination was sent, which in my case was the 24th of March? That's the question. That's it.
Yeah, it'll be when you had your validity notice, that would be when you'd be an official candidate.
So that's the validity note. Okay, that's the earlier.
Yep.
Okay, and you return it electronically back to where it came from. And
if you return it to the returning officer inbox, it's probably better.
Sorry, return it.
The returning officer at westnorthants.gov.uk. I think that's probably where we'd want all the.
No, the returning officer.
Yeah.
Returning officer, right. Can you see I've got the paper form from the Electoral Commission on there?
Mm-hmm.
Where should I return that form? Is it all right in the forum at Toaster?
It should be addressed to the Guildhall at St Giles Square. This one I have to try and remember the address off the top of my head. The Guildhall,
okay,
yeah. That's where we get all our emails.
That's all right. I can look that up. So does that need to be posted,
NM1 the other way around? Yes, they can be posted in.
Or can I hand it in at the forum? Or can I hand it in at the forum?
You could hand it in at the forum because it will just go into internal post to us.
Right. Okay. Then so you're happy.
Yeah.
Okay. And it says on the form, it says a copy shown to me and marked, and that's presumably the name I put on the Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think that's really all I wanted to know. Post it to the Guildhall and return it to the electronic one to be returned to the returning officer.
And the email is in the chat.
Yeah.
Sorry, the email is in
the email in the chat room on this call that we're doing, so you can see the correct email address for the returning officer.
Oh, is it? Okay. Was there anything else? I think. Oh, and I've got a number for the number. It says on the expense form that you have to calculate it from the electorate number. I assume that in Toaster it's 11,581 on the 3rd of March. That's the number I've used because that's what I was told.
The electorates are all on our website now. So if you look at the Elections 25 page, on there we've got all our electorates so that you can do your returns, and it works out. There's a grid there for all the electoral areas.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Carl Squires.
Hello, yeah, thank you. Obviously, we'll let you know, polling agents and counting agents. Do we need to let you know if the agent's going to be there all day from 9:30?
It would be helpful, yeah, just to help us manage the attendance.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you. Councillor Baggott-Webb.
Thanks, Anna. A couple of questions. First of all, are we saying partners are not allowed, Paul?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, but if there's a counting agent, that's okay.
Correct.
Okay. Second question, I'm a bit unclear about the parish count. Is that taking place on the Saturday?
It is, yeah. So we'll start the parish count from 9:30 on Saturday. The number of contested parishes or parish wards is lower than we anticipated, and therefore we're not placing similar restrictions on attendance for the parish count.
Okay, I just didn't see any paperwork in the pack about the parish count. Is that missing or?
No, it's in there. Should be.
Yeah.
I think it's got the timetables all laid out. So
Okay, let's stay close look. Thank you for the clarification.
no worries. Thank you. And we've also had one query in the chat that just says, I haven't had a spreadsheet to fill in expenses. Where could I get one?
So in the link I've put in the candidate on our web page, there's a link to all of the forms you would need. So the spreadsheet is only relevant for the West Northamptonshire ward elections. For the parish elections, there's just a PDF document that needs to be completed, and it's just the one bit that you need to complete. And yeah, need to put that on again.
Onto the chat so you can see that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Baggott-Webb, you've still got a hand up. Is that the old hand?
Sorry, I'll take
That's all right.
it
That's
down.
all right. Just checking. That's fine. Don't worry. Christine Walsh.
Sorry, just turning on my microphone. So as a parish councillor, I can hold a meeting or a coffee morning or something and put through expenses for that. Who do I actually collect the money off of?
Well, might want to. So the expenses is the declaration of what you've spent. You don't receive those expenses. You're legally obliged to tell to record what you've spent within the limit, but you don't get them back.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad you asked that question, because it has come up occasionally with people saying, when do I get my money back? And it's a little bit embarrassing. You have to explain. They're not going to see that money again.
Well, one of the other things I was thinking, well, hang on a second, what if somebody doesn't make it through, what happens there then? Okay, thank you.
Yes, all obviously
and you said, are you going to put in the chat this parish election PDF form for expenses? That would be useful.
Yeah, it's linked on to, so we've provided the link on our website, which has all of the expenses forms that you'd need.
Oh, is
listed there. So there's a option to
it's the
download.
last item. Yeah, it's the last item in the chat at the moment on this meeting.
So
appreciate that. Thank you.
On the link, there'll be a little bit where it says parish elections, and then there will be a link saying download the parish election expenses form.
And do parish councillors tend to turn up for the count?
Sometimes.
It's a bit of a mixture, really.
Yeah. It will be, if you've been to the count on Friday, the parish count may seem like something of an anticlimax, if I can put it that way, but we will obviously have people turn up.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. There's just one more question in the chat. What does from Sue Pearson, what does a nil return look like? I assume you mean on expenses. Do we just write nil in the return?
Essentially, yeah. You would just write nil across the board. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Sorry, one more question. I've just seen that. Is the spending limit for parish council's expenses 8p per elector?
Yes.
There you go. Nice and simple. Darryl Wayne Timmins.
Yes, good evening. If there's 7 vacancies within your parish council, does that mean every voter can vote for 7 nominees, or is there a maximum limit?
Yeah, if
You can-
you're
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mark. I was going to say, if your parish is contested, so you're going to the polls on the 1st of May, and you've got 10 people put themselves forward, but only 7 vacancies, then they get to vote, have 7 votes. So on that paper.
And secondly, one quick question. I think you've already answered it. There's quite a number of new people in the parish who wish to be part of the process, and we've decided to hold a Q&A session in the village hall. That's acceptable, and we just put on money for advertising, refreshments, and just send that on the expense returns, and that's costed out of our own pocket and the hire of the hall as well. I think you've said yes before to that on the parish spends.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's correct. Yeah. Okay. A question just in the chat again. Are there any rules about what you can put on election rosettes? Oops, Louise. Yeah, I was going to say. Well,
I need to dig in my book actually, because I think it can only be the party. I don't think you can put anything else. But I do need to check. There's certain things about size of rosettes as well. So I'll need to look at that one.
What did you have in mind? Can you ask?
I was going to say the mind boggles in terms of, I don't know. The person hasn't said, but perhaps that's one we could. Oh, there. Can you put their name on it?
Sorry, I'm quickly going on the commission site to have a look.
while you're having a look at that as well, just checking. So there's another question in the chat, which is just around: do we have to put all expenses down incurred, or only those over a certain value? And should you declare things like transport to hand in nomination papers? So maybe Mark, if you could answer that while Louis is looking.
I would say that any expenses you have, you would have to put on, but I wouldn't say that travelling to submit your nomination paper is a campaign expense. I'd call that just a regular. That it's not that. It's more expenses for your campaign rather than sort of you just driving into the council offices. But I would say that it's better. Any queries on candidate expenditure is always worth just referring to the Electoral Commission if you've got any other queries, just because they're the experts on it rather than us.
Yeah.
The guidance on rosettes for tellers states tellers may wear coloured rosettes or a badge of reasonable size as this assists electors by making it clear that they are activists and not electoral officials. The rosette or badge may display the name of a candidate and or an emblem or description. The rosette or badge should not bear a slogan and must not be oversized. Tellers must not carry, display any headwear, footwear or other apparel that carries any writing, picture or sign relating to any candidate or party apart from a rosette.
There you go. And we've put a link in, so Rebecca's very helpfully put a link in on the specific guidance that Paul's just read on rosettes into the chat. So again, you can have a look at that. I think the question on the all expenses has been answered, so it should be everything. I mean, Mark's just described if you're just travelling to drop your papers, it's not it's not a campaign expense, but everything should go down. It's better to make sure that everything's covered, I think, from that point of view. And I think that's obviously what Mark responded to the question specifically. Okay. Oh, when you say tellers, right? What are tellers in terms of a person standing at a polling station, Paul?
Well, teller is essentially someone who stands outside of the polling station and asks for elector numbers. So they will then keep a record of who has voted. The electors can refuse to give you their elector number, but it's sort of used as a mechanism for agents to sort of see which of their people hasn't gone to turn out to vote, and then they can go and knock on the door and try and encourage them to go out.
Okay, and there's again, Louise has put a link in the chat about tellers and sort of their role and what they do and everything else, so that's clear as well. So I'm not sure what that question means. Can candidates wear big stuff, not just tellers? I'm
I
not sure
think
what
the
that means.
Rosette rules is
Oh,
the
okay.
same for all
Yes.
for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it says
Yeah,
reasonable
apologies.
size, so what's defined as reasonable size, I don't know, but that's the rules. Yeah.
Let's not open that debate. But yeah, I think from memory, I think as well the guidance when you look at it kind of gives some examples, doesn't it? So it should all be there on the website. Right, I don't see any other hands up. If you haven't had a chance to answer a question, of course, you can use the 2 email contacts that we've given you. We'll circulate slide, or sorry, we'll put the slides on the website so everyone can see them too, and the recording too, so that other people could be referred to this. But yeah, if in doubt, then obviously you could contact us through those dedicated mailboxes, and we'll answer any questions that you have. But I hope everyone has found that useful. We haven't quite gone to I'm sorry, someone's just put a question there. We've got private security who will be guarding the boxes overnight to make sure that they stay safe. And yes, there's full security. I'm not going to go into more than that, as you'd expect, but we will make sure that all the boats are secure overnight. Yeah, so hopefully everybody found that useful. Any questions, do follow up with us, and we look forward to running hopefully a really successful election, smooth and organised. And as I said, thank you for all of your time this evening. You will get half an hour back as well, so that's good. Thank you as well to the team for fielding the questions and for all of the information that you provided. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.